We're now ready to commence with our first session for the day. With payments becoming increasingly cashless and the industry's role in fostering inclusion that has become a significant priority, payments also support the development of digital economies and are driving innovation, all while functioning as a stable backbone for our economies. On the same lines, we have our first topic of the day: what's driving trends in payments? And for that, we have a panel of very esteemed speakers by our side. So I do request each and every one of you now to kindly get your hands together and welcome our esteemed panelists up on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome up on stage Mr. Lokesh Gupta, the Managing Director at BUK Technology Barclays. Let's have a round of applause and welcome him up on stage, please. Thank you for joining us, sir. I would now like to welcome Mr. Ramesh Narasimhan, the CEO of Worldline India. Let's have a round of applause and welcome him up on stage, please. Hello, sir. I'd like to take the pleasure of inviting Mr. Shashvat Nakrani, the founder and COO of BharatPe. Let's have a big round of applause and welcome him up on stage, please. Thank you for joining us, sir. Let's welcome Mr. Vasanth, Jeyapaul, the CEO of CAMSPay. He's amongst us, and I request him to join us up on stage. Thank you so very much for joining us, sir. And this session will be moderated by Mr. Rohan Bagai, the Senior Partner, AZB and Partners. Let's have a round of applause and welcome him up on stage, please. Thank you so very much. I request you all to kindly take your seats, please. Thank you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is now us looking at a very fulfilling 40 minutes. I do request all our panelists to kindly ensure that we have this session wrapped in 40 minutes. Our moderator, please. And ladies and gentlemen, of course, we're looking forward to all of you wholeheartedly participating right through this session and the sessions to follow. So right after this panel is done, we would also be taking questions from you, and we're looking forward to all of you wholeheartedly participating in the same. So with that, I now hand over to our moderator, Mr. Rohan Bagai.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. At the outset, let me thank GFF, the organizers who've been very kind to have us here. This is my third time at GFF. It's always a pleasure coming here. And every year we come here, it's bigger and bigger. I'm told this year we're expecting 500,000 people here over the next 3-4 days. So it's just mind-boggling the way things are moving. I have pleasure of moderating a panel with such esteemed members from the industry. It's a very, very, I think, interesting topic on payment trends, what is driving those trends in the payment space. I think it will be fair to say that we live in an era of digitization. There is tremendous use of technology in all walks of life, whatever we do, whether it is buying grocery, whether it is consuming content, whether it is e-commerce, making payments across the board. So digitization has been around. Yes, there have been certain factors which have been responsible for this digitization. I think two essential, or rather factors, which I think important factors, which I think lead to this digitization. It started with demonetization, and I think the COVID pandemic fast-tracked this digitization. It will also, I think, important to acknowledge that India's demographics are such where we live in a country where the population is so young. They are fast adopters of technology. So therefore, I think digitization also helps in growth of digital payment adoption. That is the second part. Third, and I think the most essential thing which I think has been a contributor to digital payments is how I think UPI has been embraced by the country at large. Yes, there has been a lot of effort put in by NPCI, the government, but the way the UPI ecosystem has evolved, new use cases evolve from time to time. It is only yesterday RBI came out with another enhancement where they allow, I think, pre-sanctioned credit to also be used through UPI. So it's, I think, expanding as you go ahead. So it's only fair to say that things will, I think, move in the right direction. I think another reason why I think digital payment has contributed so immensely is because of, I think, how the business models have evolved over a period of time. You look at these platform-based businesses which actually revolve around payments, where this concept of embedded finance is actually being introduced, where tech companies, marketplaces are all looking at digital payments, wallets, lending as a value-added service which they are offering over and above the products and services that they render. So all in all, I think we are living in an era where digital payments is here to stay. With this, I think, background, I'll probably open up the discussion, and maybe Shashvat, I'll start with you first. Given all your experience with BharatPe and how I think contactless payments has become such a big theme in this country, could you share your experience in terms of how contactless payments is evolving? Because I think today we are moving from a QR code based payment to something which is linked to, say, contactless in the form of conversational or voice based payments. There are also some players which are very interesting, following a sound wave based technology to also, I think, use payments where there is no internet involved. So I think these use cases are evolving from time to time. So it'll be interesting to, I think, note what is your experience and how do you see this use case evolving?
Sure, sure. First of all, a pleasure to be here and pleasantly surprised to see a full house on the first session. Very warm enthusiasm people of this country have for whatever fintech has been for this country and whatever we witnessed over the past few years. First of all, contactless is a very, very old term, but it really kind of meant something when COVID pandemic happened. It was a term kind of being coined with everything that we do, be it payment, be it shopping, or be it meeting somewhere, or be it having an event organized and things like that. And the second, contactless means a really different, contactless payments per se means a different thing for other countries and for India. For other countries, it's doing a card payment on POS with tapping a card. For us, it's scanning a QR and making a payment. So for them, it's kind of contactless, but it's still you're touching the card is touching the POS machine. But for us, it's like in real term the contactless, right? We have, as a country, kind of missed, not missed, but jumped one step ahead and went to the most advanced kind of payment known to world right now. The ideal thing that India was going after was getting more penetration on the card and using more and more card at POS machines to get higher digital payments. But then with launch of UPI and a few other stuff that kind of government pushed, we have jumped that step and went far ahead in terms of the advancement of the digital payments. For Western countries, it has become a matter of research and study as to how a country of our size has made this happen. We witnessed 10 billion transactions, UPI transactions last month. It is like mind-boggling numbers that we are witnessing, right? So that is something that is also in talked about in US Congress, right? How do we do this kind of innovation in Western countries? So that is really become a matter of discussion and a matter of curiosity across the world, no doubt about that. Now, the factors which contributed to this, I don't think it's only driven by industry, right? A lot of regulation and government push has gone into it. NPCI has worked hard to make sure there is no hindrance to grow this particular UPI method. First of all, it's made interoperable, right? This is a term never heard in the Western society, right? You need to acquire a merchant network and then it sort of works. Here, any UPI app you have 150 plus, or maybe latest number is 200 plus, works on the same QR code. it's instant bank-to-bank transfer. There is no concept of wallet, or there is no concept of late settlement or something like that. It's by regulation zero MDR, right? For a country like ours, which is a cost-conscious country, right, where even a 0.1% of charge, people have resistance to pay that money for a payment, right? Where they think it's my money, it's my sale. Why should I pay commission to someone else? So this is by law. Government has put it as a zero MDR. The other thing that happened is the internet penetration, right? Geo came out with really cheap internet, and now the entire universe of internet users kind of got expanded. So that has helped a lot. Third thing that came was demonetization, where cash kind of was decirculated, and people were forced to do the payment or have that experience, and then became used to that convenience of making a digital payment. And then the last one being the COVID pandemic. So all of these things combined has put us ahead on the race of digital payments, and we can safely say that India is leading the charge as far as contactless payments is concerned now.
Thanks, Shashvat. I think these aspects are very, very important to understand when we are, on a path where cashless India or digital India is not a distant dream anymore. We are moving in a direction where we're not just looking at domestic payments, even cross-border payments are undergoing a lot of transformation. Lokesh, on cross-border payments, if I can maybe take some point of view from you in terms of how are things evolving as far as Forex or cross-border payments is concerned? Because we keep on hearing use of DLT, use of blockchain technology that will bring in efficiencies, replace the conventional correspondent bank arrangement when it comes to cross-border payments. Have we really seen that transformation? Is that really a trend which we can follow?
Sure. Thank you, Rohan, and good morning, everyone. So, look, as far as cross-border payments are concerned, I would just extend what's happening in the domestic market now, extending that to an international level, correct? Let me first start with sharing some facts and figures, correct? In, 2017, the cross-border market was, transactions were valued at about $150 trillion. By 2027, that's expected to reach $250 to $75 trillion cross-border payments, correct? The world is flatter. I think if I see, when I grew up, or in the last, I would say 20 years ago, there wasn't much international travel. There was not much opening up of economies. Today, I see, people in India, in other countries, making more trips, more travel arrangements than others. Students, taking up universities, admissions in universities abroad. More and more, trades happening, cross-border trades happening, manufacturing companies opening up their doors, etc. So all of these trends, with the world becoming really, really flat, are, driving the needs for cross-border payments. We also heard talking, especially, the Indian, I would say, consumer being very cost conscious. I would say value conscious, actually, correct? So if you, when you see a domestic payment is completely, zero cost, but the moment you get into doing any cross-border FX kind of transactions, 2.5%, 3% charges, they are levied, correct? And it, in my view, it just paints the customer saying, why the hell should I pay even a 3%, just for making a cross-border, FX transaction? So I think the drivers are there, the reasons are there, in terms of making the cross-border payments equally efficient. For those of you who closely follow this segment, you would know in 2020, G20 made this a priority. So this specific topic was discussed at the G20 summit, and kind of simplifying, making the cross-border payments more and more efficient was a key initiative. And then they've come up with, I think by October 2020, they published almost like a a 19 segment improvement plan for cross-border payments, focusing on roughly, I think, about 5 focus areas. How do we simplify regulatory aspects? How do we make sure that we improve the data exchange formats? How do we make sure that there is public-private partnership, et cetera, correct? So it is complex by any stretch of imagination. Think about just digitizing payments in a given country, correct? So while India, for example, has made kind of a lot of progress, but there are still several countries that need to catch up, and if you now start to say that, okay, we need to do what we have done in the domestic segment, kind of do the same thing at an international level, you can just understand when different governments are involved, different regulatory bodies are involved, it just becomes more and more complex. So the need is there, the opportunity is there. However, there are some real challenges that we need to be addressing. And I think we have taken, I would say internationally, we have taken at least, I would say, one first big step towards that. And for, again, those of you who are following the payments industry, this whole ISO 222 format that has come in. At least it's a step towards standardizing the way we exchange payments-related data, correct? And in my view, that's foundational, correct? Because without this, the kind of problems that we currently see in terms of different standards, information not being exchanged to the expectations where we can do various KYC and other checks, etc. Those things are starting to be addressed at a foundational levels. I think this movement, and with most of the organizations now in one shape or the form, and I think different governments are doing it. We may call it a different format, or maybe have certain tweaks in the format, but largely the core mantra of what the ISO 222 format is being followed by pretty much all the governments now. So that to me gives a big kind of foundation, a common playing field for all the countries. Now with this, we have rich set of information that is being exchanged. You can do with a higher degree of confidence in terms of who is sending the money, who is receiving it, do your KYC checks, etc. So that in a big way enables the cross-border payments. Now, that's not just the only enabling factor. We need to make sure that different regulatory bodies, they come together in terms of ensuring that whenever the handshake is happening, various capital and other requirements are concerned, they are taken care of in a consistent way. Then there are legacy platforms, correct? So while I think there are private firms or companies that are on their path to digitizing, but still, and for those of you who are especially at large organizations where there has been a lot of legacy, you would appreciate that we are still not where we need to be or we ought to be in terms of having straight-through processing, digitizing our journeys, etc. And by the way, with cross-border payments, from a consumer point of view, they do expect the settlements to be almost instant, correct? Whereas in several cases, you will see now it may take up to 2 days, 3 days. So you send money and it'll be 3 days, and then sometimes you have to follow. And if there is some screw up somewhere in the chain, it's a nightmare for you to figure out where your payment is stuck, correct? So from a consumer point of view, they expect similar to what they've been used to now, instant payments. Similar thing is being expected for cross borders as well, correct? But in order for us to do that, we need to ensure that the underlying technology platforms are there as well, correct? So there are some challenges. Some movement is already happening, data standardization, etc. It is a big opportunity in my view, and players who are, in my view, who are able to facilitate this and are able to do this better than some of the others, early entrants into this segment, in my view, will benefit a lot in terms of their expansion, their profitability, etc. So that's my view on what's happening in the cross-border payment side. Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Lokesh. Ramesh, you want to contribute?
Yeah, I just want to add on this, Rohan. So I'll just bring the human side of what Lokesh just mentioned. I had an opportunity to work in the Middle East, in Dubai, for about 1.5 years. And you see a lot of Indians in the Middle East. And when you see the semi-skilled, unskilled people working there, they work in 50 degrees heat, right? At the end, they earn a small amount of money, which they want to send home. And imagine if that person has to pay 3%, 3.5%, and it was much more. I'm talking about almost 10 years ago. If we can give them UPI through what Lokesh mentioned, government-to-government intervention, and they're able to transfer money instantaneously, it's a huge saving for them. And second, things like SWIFT, they take their own time, and some things go wrong, then you don't have access to your money. The family is in India waiting for this monthly money to come. And trust me, these are those people who contribute to almost 1/3 of our country's forex every year. Almost 30% comes from essentially, overseas expat Indians, and mostly in the Gulf, right? They don't think of multiple investment opportunities. Whatever they earn, they send it back to India, right? Faithfully. And so when you saw that, and couple of our, friends were helping these people go to the dormitories where they stay and explain to them that don't use this particular method, it's too expensive, you'll save money. They're not even educated enough to understand that difference, but they contribute enormously to our economy. So in the area of remittances, when it comes to cross-border, if we can get UPI across to the Middle East, and it's there today, UPI is available, and to even the Far East, where a lot of Indian citizens go and work, I think it's a tremendous efficiency for them, as well as saving for them, that they don't have to pay 3.5% or more. And money comes safely in an instant to their bank account in India. So that's the first part. On the second part, when it comes to commerce, I'll just give another example. So, we buy, today we don't even think twice. We buy an education course online, we do it, we pay for it in Forex. Now, we also, a few years ago, we were buying music, subscribing to streaming music sites. We also go and do an Airbnb, right, if you're traveling overseas. And some of us have the luxury of doing so, the privilege of doing so. But it means basically that you need to have an international card, a card that will work in Forex. Can we do this using UPI? For many of our people in India who use primarily UPI, can we enable overseas transactions, right? Can they order something they need and pay through UPI? That's something that we are working on, and we are enabling for merchants overseas, where they can collect payment in Indian rupees in India using UPI, using cards, and then we send the money across to them. The reverse way, can they buy something from India, right, using local payment methods there, right? So these are some of the things that cross-border transactions will help us enable. Of course, there's lot of regulations and all that we have to cross, but it's certainly something that I see in the future will become easier, because really with this whole e-commerce thing, these geographical boundaries don't mean anything anymore as far as e-commerce is concerned. You can really buy anything that you want anywhere, and be able to make use of that service. So I think from a cross-border perspective, you'll see more and more, as Lokesh said, standardization coming in, countries coming to an agreement. Like we have an agreement with Singapore or with the Middle Eastern countries, so that we facilitate transfers, and even the banks are enabling all this. So I think this is one area that really needs to become more efficient and much more simpler. And imagine the power of using UPI, such a simple payment interface, to buy something which is available maybe in UK or maybe in France. It's a fantastic thing that can enable us, as Indians, to be able to take the benefits of.
The same thing on the trade side, like like when there are importers, exporters, they need to exchange money for goods or vice versa. Correct? Again, huge opportunity. So for those of you who are here with a entrepreneurial kind of mindset, I think there's a huge opportunity to be tapped in this area. I would recommend really studying and understanding what the current lay of the land is in terms of how the exchange happens, the role of correspondent banks, why do we need them, and then figure out the opportunities where you can really eliminate some of the inefficiencies that are currently in the entire supply chain. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you for your I think words. I'll come to Vasanth. Vasanth, there is this concept of open banking which is evolving, and I think when we started this debate, there is always a question of whether fintechs are really challenging the banks. I think open banking is a classic case where fintechs are really collaborating with the banks, offering banking solutions on platforms, offering value-added services, monetizing those services by offering, say, accounting solutions, providing all kinds of reconciliation, vendor solutions, etc. So what has been your experience and how do you think this space is going to evolve?
Thank you, Rohan, and good morning to all of you. It's feeling really excited to be part of this panel today, and then it's almost like the first day, first show of sitting in a movie like Jailer or whatever. So really excited. Open banking, the way we want to imagine about open banking is not just about a technology transformation that has happened to banks and the ecosystem here. It is a coming together of the banks, institutions, then the merchants, and the consumers, right? So it's not like a cliche. We always keep talking about this thing, bringing all this, putting all this together in a box and then making things work. It's not as easy as we talk about, right? Today, if you look around the world, open banking has been talked about right through 2014-15 timeframe. Especially the European countries took the lead of setting up standards. And we hear about PSD1, PSD2, and so on and so forth. Those are global standards which govern essentially the local markets, not essentially the global markets, right? We talked about how this cross-border transactions can be enabled and more efficiency can be brought in and so on and so forth. What we are seeing in India, especially about open banking, is a real action that we are doing. In many ways that we have leapfrogged in terms of exploiting the open framework that we have, especially the open data framework. You think about anything that we've done in this country, all of us were very proud about this UADAI, the Aadhaar enrollment that has happened for more than 1.3 billion population, and never happened anywhere else in the world. And likewise, your UPI. Through this conference, you'll hear a lot about UPI, to the extent we'll get bored about, but then that's a power which can be unlocked from utilizing an open framework like UPI, okay? So that's in the forefront of what we're doing in anything about payments in this country. A little while ago, earlier this day, we were talking along with other panelists about what happened 20 years ago and what we are seeing today. The kind of transformation we happen, it's all because of essentially enabling frameworks like open banking, right? So we are calling this banking, but today I think somebody did mention saying that fintechs, I think Rohan mentioned it, right? So no longer one CEO of a large bank in this country famously said this: we don't require banks anymore. Banking is essential. Okay, that's the era that we are in. Broad themes, essentially, what is required to see this real open banking happening and how we can go and explore and exploit that framework. Essentially, the regulatory familiarity, right? So if you go back and see every continent, every country, you have different framework for Australia, different framework for UK, Europe follows something, US follows something else. India, we do have our own framework and so on and so forth. That's essentially how it will evolve. But over time, we see that the moment we standardize all of these things, simple thing like, API standardization. Today, even within our country, between different industry verticals, we don't have standard way of talking to each other. We talk about interoperability. That can be really achieved in the true sense. Only we can create standardization when it comes to API. Now, of course, we've come a long way in terms of exploiting API framework, and most of them are open in nature. They're pretty much published. More and more banks are publishing their APIs for fintech companies to consume, and thereby serving consumers a lot of benefits. It's not just about one or two we can think about. Be it risk management, be it on onboarding, be it on delivering better service levels to your own customers, and so on. So the aggregation, the benefit of aggregation. So one big example I want to talk about, which is very close to what we are doing within CAMS today, is the account aggregation. All of us are hearing about this for the last few years. A great example of what we can achieve by doing an open architecture. Essentially, this will involve banking, this will involve other industries, other regulation, and so on and so forth. To my view, it's about 12 to 18 months away. Okay, the promise of what we can all do with account aggregation framework. Just think about it. Today, any new to credit kind of segment, we are still 40% penetration done in this country, about 1.4 billion population, the most populous country in the world. We have still not achieved what we want to achieve, what we stated 25 years ago, saying that we'll have inclusion done and so on and so forth. But quite honestly, I think a framework of this nature, which assumes a lot of things, we already have hundreds of institutions being part of it. And all industries are not operating in the same space, but at the same time, the banking ecosystem, the NBFC ecosystem, and recently the capital markets, they all come together to explore and exploit the data that we have. It's not just the data. Data, when you always talk about data, is always a question about how secure it's going to be and so on and so forth. I'll talk a little bit about the history, right? So those days, we all think about when you have a debit card or credit card, and your PIN is stored in the bank, we thought it's very safe and so on and so forth. Today, the conversation has completely changed. No longer the institutions are the owners of the data. Today, we recognize that they are only the custodians. Players like us, we are a multi-regulated entity, CAMS, but various industry data management we do. There's from capital markets, insurance, we create and help insurance accounts to be open. We are a pension repository and so on and so forth. But we don't own this data. The beauty is, without having to own the data, we still can exploit and see how we can make better utilization of this safely, securely. That is the trick of this thing. So just to summarize, I think what we're going to see, the power of all of this aggregation, I'll give one example just to summarize what I want to say. Today, there's a lot of product aggregation that is happening. Okay, that's where fintechs have a much bigger role to play, where banks give way for fintechs to take the lead in terms of be it onboarding, even owning the end consumer. Okay, I think there is a bit of fear. If you ask me 5 years, 10 years ago, let's say if I'm a banker, I would always think that why would I let a fintech company own my customer or the end consumer, or a card holder, account holder? Today, that's not the story. Today, people want to see how they can enable all of these things and reach out to the masses. That's the key of what it is. I think more and more open conversation will happen. People are going to come together. I talked about product aggregation. Today, there are enough examples in the market. There are portals or let's say that apps which helps the end consumer to take it one view. This is what we've been struggling. I tell you, in the early 2000s, banks used to say that you have an account view of your own bank account. You can also look at the other account. It was a big struggle because no two systems are connected with each other. Okay, all disparate. There's no exchange of right level of information, no standardization, whatnot. But today, that is all solved by the right way of looking at this aggregation that is in play. I can tell you there are, I don't want to name the names here, but there are at least some top 10 channels in this country, financial distributors. They can give you exact view of what you have. On your own, you can't do this. They get your consent, okay? The power is with the consumer. They're giving the power back to the consumer, making an use of this open banking framework, the open framework, and then able to give them back to tell them the story of where they stand in terms of their financial standing, in terms of saving, deposit, investments, protection, okay, name anything. Now, this conversation doesn't stop only with banking, okay? This framework actually enables the commerce. I think Ramesh did mention about commerce. So, for example, you do transaction, payment data can tell you a lot of good insights, right? Using the payment transaction data, you can actually come with a lot of inferences. That will help the adjacencies. I'll give you a quick example. I think a movie, people go for movies and all that. So typically they use a credit card or some method of payment, but that behavior gets captured in real time today, okay? This data is harnessed by typically the OTT platforms in the country. So when you watch a movie, again, my current favorite movie is Jailer. Go and watch Jailer. So then your psyche, your way of doing things, your behavior, everything gets captured. And then when you go and see your OTT platforms, be it Netflix or Prime Video, whatever, you see similar kind of a thing or the kind of things you want to watch. That's a level of exploration and exploitation that has happened in a very positive way. Of course, one final example about open banking, a fallout of that. Essentially, your KYC and all that we talked about, right? It's very, very difficult to...
Mr. Vasanth Jeyapaul, thank you so very much, sir.